All right, guys, welcome to another video of 2IM. You guys are here because you already understand the importance of reading and how much of a role it plays in securing a great percentile for your VARC section. So we'll jump into what kind of books you guys could read. I'm going to suggest a few books that I have read and are those that I can personally vouch for. And I'll also tell you guys about the kind of articles, kind of online sources that you can refer to bring your reading up to VARC CAT level and even beyond. Okay, that's the aim, right? You shouldn't stop at one level. Just sky's the limit. All right. So first off, I'm gonna once again very quickly lay the emphasis on why you should be reading so much. Okay, and this is something I love doing because it is something absolutely vital, right? So if you struggle with reading, you're not going to do well at CAT VARCs. You're going to struggle. These passages are at least 400 to 500 words long at the very least. Like in the smallest one is like 400 words long. So that's like if you would write it down by by hand, that would be at least 3 to 4 pages of A4. So these are not short, and if you're somebody who tires out very quickly when they try to read anything above uh, any passage that contains more than 2 paragraphs, if you're one of those people who tires out very quick, yeah, you have to amp up your you have to amp up your reading ability. Okay, so you're going to struggle with CAT otherwise. Now the next thing is CAT RCs are not straightforward. Not only are they long, they're also sometimes complex. And unless you read a bit, you're not going to magically get the ability to decipher complex passages in the exam. So the best way to get that ability is practice, and by practice I mean you have to start today, right? So your brain can process complex themes, nuances, inferences a lot better if you already kind of put it through this reading regimen. Okay, so that's another reason why you should be reading. Now, CAT isn't just about reading a passage in the most literal sense. CAT questions are very inferential. There's a lot of reading in between the lines that you need to be doing. So once again, if you're not reading on your own, if you're not like taking the time out, you're not going to magically get this ability to figure out what the CAT passage is saying, extract the main idea effortlessly. You're not going to be able to do any of that. So reading is important. You need to be comfortable with reading. You need to be able to decipher and delineate the various nuances that the passages are talking about. And the best way, and in my opinion, the only way to go about it is to just start reading. Read as much as you can. Of course, with the right mindset, you don't take it as a chore, but you have to start reading. There are no two ways about it. And like I said, right, inferences, you have to understand what the author's tone is. All these kind of nuances you can pick up only when you have invested quite a few hours in reading. And when I say quite a few hours, I mean quite a bit, quite a lot. Okay, you have to have read quite a bit to get there. Again, what happens when you read is your vocabulary improves just by the very process, by the very act of opening a book, reading something online. You find words you don't know, your curiosity kicks in. After you're done with the passage, you go online, you Google that, and you figure out what that word means. The more you do this, the fewer words you will find that you don't know the meanings to, and over time, your vocabulary really improves. And at one point, you kind of hit a level where finding a word that you don't know is very rare. So that is the level you should aspire to. Okay. Now, we have also analyzed all the VARC passages, RC passages from the VARC section for the past 5 years. That is all the way back to 2020, all 3 slots. So there are 5 years, 3 slots, and each passage contains each section contains 4 passages, or rather each slot contains 4 passages. So that's 4 slots, 4 passages per slot, 3 slots per exam, and that is 5 years. So 4 into 3 into 5, that is 60. So we went through 60 passages, and these were some of the insights that we struck upon. Right? First, for history, history, science, sociology, these are very important topics. These get asked quite a lot. I'm not saying history, science, and sociology are standalone themes. CAT passages are rarely standalone, as I'll just show you guys right here. 19 out of 60 passages had dual themes. So they're not strictly about history or strictly about science. There could be a passage about history and how it influences, say, customer behavior when it comes to economics. So there's a blend of history and economics. There could be something about science and women's rights. There could be an article about how there were very few women back in the 1900s that were scientists. Of the proportion of scientists, there were very few. So there are all sorts of passages that get asked. The themes are getting increasingly difficult to separate, and they're getting increasingly inextricably mixed. So you can't look at a passage and just say, this is just history, or this is just sociology. Those days are gone. So it's a very interdisciplinary kind of reading that is expected from you to do well at these passages, because the passages themselves are becoming increasingly interdisciplinary. Okay, so let's just move on. Now, the thing with, like I said, the thing with the topics that are asked, you can't expect yourself to be very comfortable with these in a jiffy, in a moment during the exam. Science passages make a lot more sense if you've read science articles in the build up to the exam. Otherwise, it could appear very dense, it could appear very almost intractable, a problem to be solved, right? You might look at the passage and be like, oh God, I don't understand head or tails of it. So what should I do? So get reading, get into this habit of reading. It's super important, right? There have been also passages on philosophy, but of course, primarily these CAT RCs are heavy on sociology, philosophy, history, science, and of course there are other disciplines that creep in, but these 4 to 5 are the major themes that you should be targeting. Okay, ironically, economics is important. Economics definitely is important, but economics is not as often asked as sociology, or say history, or science, or a mixture of any of these three. Okay, but the general point that I'm trying to make is read everything and understand that these topics will be expected, will be asked. So if you're an engineer, don't say, I hate philosophy, I hate sociology, let me not bother with these 2 topics, these are trivial. I will, sure, I'll do well in the exam, I'm sure I'll be fine in the exam. You won't be fine in the exam, believe me, if you don't put in the effort right now. So now I think I have your curiosity. Now you guys are probably saying, looking at the screen and going, okay, you know what's next? What are the books? Give me the books. Show me the money. Show me the books. All right, so fine. I get it. Please calm down. I'm gonna show you the books now. Okay. Before we go to the books, I am gonna briefly recap, or just maybe jog your memory on the kind of non-book sources that you should be, or that you could be using to improve your reading. First off, we have something called Bharat's reading list on our website. It's free. There are 1,000 plus articles. Bharat has been doing that. Bharadwaj has been doing that since 2018, and it's a veritable collection of very eclectic and diverse topics and articles, and they're all rich. They're all not easy. The average length is much greater than a CAT passage, and they are not easy to understand. I'm not saying they're difficult, but they are a little dense. They can get a little dense. So if you want to start with Bharat's reading list. We strongly recommend that. These are very high quality articles, and the best part is they're all free, right? And if you want to also subscribe to a newspaper, which personally I do, and I ask everybody to do the same, there are some good papers in India. There's the Hindu, there's the Economic Times, there's the Indian Express, there's the New Indian Express if you are in the southern part of the country. The northern part just has Indian Express. Okay, Business Line, Business Standard. These are all good newspapers. Please don't fuss about these things. Please don't be like, oh well, the Hindu's better or the Economic Times is better. Oh, or Times of India is like, not a great paper. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. If you're somebody who can't read a cat passage comfortably, if you're somebody who's, let alone cat, if you're somebody who just doesn't like reading, I don't think you have the liberty to reject a newspaper and say, oh, you know what, I'm not going to read it, it's not good enough. Well, it may not be good enough, but your current level is nowhere near what is needed for cat. So if you're one of those people, I'm just trying to hold up a mirror to you, and I'm trying to persuade you to please approach newspapers with an open mind. Okay. Now there are also online sources. There's the Guardian, which is an excellent free source online. The Guardian is of course based out of the UK. So is the Independent. That too is free, and again you get exposed to a different kind of writing. British authors, they have a slightly different way of writing, and it's nice to get exposed to that, because CAT sometimes does pick passages from that part of the world, authors of those part of the world, UK, UK, United Kingdom, England, Ireland, Scottish authors. Well, so the people who write for the Guardian, generally they belong to that group, and it's a different style of writing, and it's very hilarious. If you were to ask me personally, I love the way they write. So the Guardian is a good news source to follow in general. There's the New York Times, and that has subscription mode, so it's not for free, but it's a great newspaper. It's a good newspaper. It has a lot of international repute. Pardon. It's a paper of great repute. So yes, the New York Times is another option. Then finally you have Aeon. Now Aeon articles are very philosophy heavy, science heavy, sociology heavy. These are not simple, straightforward reads. You can't read them. Ideally, you should be reading them in one stretch. But at the beginner level, they're very difficult to finish in a stretch. They take time. They'll take you half an hour, 40 minutes, even 45 minutes. That's perfectly fine. But this is a great source for philosophy, sociology, ecology, science, environment, race relations, whatever. It's a great source, and it's free, so you can use that. Now, going to the juiciest part of the video, I think that's what most of you are here for. I'm going to recommend a few books that I've read personally and that I think could be a nice starting point for you to begin your own journey into reading books and developing your own foundations, strong foundations for CAT VARC. So the first one is, pardon, the first one is The Godfather by Mario Puzo. Now the book is kind of long. It's 600 odd pages. It's a long read, and the English is not very complicated. It's straightforward. But the book itself, though it's long, it's gripping. I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but there used to be, and I think there still are, there are crime families in New York, in not just New York, in the United States, Italian crime families, right? If you guys have seen The Goodfellas or The Godfather, you guys know what I'm talking about, okay? So, by the way, the movie Godfather is based on this book. So, again, it's a very captivating read. You don't feel bored easily. Wonderful, wonderful book. And you get to learn a lot about how these criminal minds, how they work. So, it's giving you some rudimentary, I wouldn't say rudimentary, but it's giving you some psychological aspect to how these guys think, how they operate. It's a very interesting read, to put it mildly. Okay, this is one of my favorites. I'm not sure how many of you watched the movie Apocalypse Now, but the movie is based on this book, and it's another interesting read. The language is a little dense sometimes because the book is written in the early 1900s. I think Joseph Conrad wrote this in 1909, if I'm not wrong. So the language is not contemporary. It's I mean not contemporary in the sense not like like what we're used to. Contemporary has, I think, another meaning altogether in English literature. So I'm not gonna enter. I'm not gonna get myself swamped up there. What I mean to say is the language used here is kind of old. It's a little, wouldn't say archaic, but it's old. So not easy to understand straight away. But the book isn't that long. It's a pretty thin book. It's 124 pages. So if you maybe take out 2 to 3 days, if you're on a weekend or maybe if you're free, 2 to 3 days, you can get it done. The best part of the book is that it chronicles a man's journey into on this river into the Congo. But that's literal interpretation. There are lots of metaphorical nuances, a lot of themes that explore colonialism, how it affects the natives, the hypocrisy of colonizers. It's a very rich read. It's a wonderful read, and you will love it. Of course, no book list is complete without 1984, which is, in my opinion, like one of the greatest science fiction novels of all time. And not just science fiction, I think political studies, right? Political science, maybe sociology. I don't know. I'm not a graduate of sociology or political science, but it's a riveting read. It's a wonderful read. The language is simple. I think they're like 300 odd pages. The language is simple. It's not trivial. It's simple. You can understand. You don't have to reread a lot. And it follows a story where society in the future has been split into three major powers, and there's a lot of authoritarianism going on. There are certain words you can't say. They have a dictionary which has removed most of the words in English. What you're left with are very basic words. There's a lot of gaslighting. There's a lot of psychological manipulation done at the state level. So war is peace, slavery is freedom. Those are the mottos that are taught to the citizens on a daily basis. So it's a very interesting, riveting read, and it's almost prophetic because we know which way the world is headed, and it's not a great direction. So he wrote this back in 1940s, somewhere in the 1930s or 40s. So for a book that old, it's incredibly ahead of its time. It's, I think, still ahead of its time. Not just its time, even our time. I think it's a book ahead of even our time. All right. Coming back now, these are some Indian authors. Khushwant Singh, I love Khushwant Singh. Khushwant Singh has this incredibly acerbic wit that you don't expect it. It doesn't get old. It's always fresh, and he is just wonderful. He's one of the best writers this country has ever seen, in my opinion. A Train to Pakistan is about the horrors of the partition, how it affected Sikhs and Muslims, how it affected their relations, led to a lot of distrust. Very interesting book. I'm not going to spoil it any further. I think it's 300 odd pages, if I am not wrong. My bad. 192 pages. Okay. Again, the language is moderate, not very difficult, although Khushwant had a very well developed vocabulary, which he did not shy away from showing off. But any great writer knows that good writing is not throwing in fancy words. Good writing is giving the right shape to your ideas. That's good writing. So the prose is basically the way the paragraphs are structured, the flow, the kind of writing. Everything is very clear, but at the same time, it grips you, right? So again, another wonderful book, in my opinion. Delhi is Not Far, Ruskin Bond, another Indian writer. Delhi is Not Far is about it's about a writer who wants to escape to my pardon. It's about a writer who wants to escape to Delhi, and he's stuck in some hill station, and the story basically revolves around him, how he's trying to get out. But at the same time, there's a lot of social commentary that is happening. So it's a wonderful book. I love this. I think it's not too long to read either. It's 150 pages, and language is moderate. Again, Ruskin Bond, of course. Sometimes there are words which you might not know, but the language is mostly moderate. But incredible storytelling, rich social themes. Right? It's almost like a critique of the society that writer was living in. Okay, it's a wonderful book. So I've told you the plot synopsis. Okay, um, going back to science fiction, Brave New World is considered to be on par with 1984 by many critics, many scholars, many people who've read the book, read both the books. It's one of the seminal works in science fiction. So 1984 was about an authoritarian government which doesn't let you do things. A Brave New World approaches this concept of a dystopia, but in a different way. A Brave New World is more like the world we live in right now. We are dumbed, right? We've been dumbed down by social media, these apps. We are living a life of just pleasure. We're not doing um, anything to improve ourselves. We are chasing short-term gains, dopamine rushes, short-term gratification, not looking for the long term. Of course, the book is not just about that. It goes much, much, much deeper into those same themes. But the world is a little more similar to ours. So it's by Aldous Huxley. It's about 270 odd pages. And again, the language is rich. The vocab is high, not super high, tricky or difficult, but there are words which you would have not heard of before. A great read if you are looking to improve your vocab. Please do buy this book. And if you want to just have a better understanding of, uh, I don't know, society, science fiction, how these two things mingle, of the world we are living in right now, how eerily similar it is to what he describes in the book, please go ahead by all means. It's a wonderful read. I always recommend this. I'm just going to leave this on for a few seconds for you guys to read. All right. Up next, we have Ernest Hemingway's Old Man and the Sea. Very interesting book. It's a book about determination, survival, not giving up. So the protagonist is an old fisherman who goes into the ocean and is trying to catch fish. Comes across this one particularly stubborn, obdurate fish. Just doesn't refuse to get reeled in by him. It's a big fish. And he fights it. The entire book is about his ordeal, and it's a nice book. It's a story about, again, like I said, determination, not giving up, persisting right till the very end. So it's something maybe you cat aspirants can also relate with. The length is again 130 pages, so it's a short read. Language is very simple. Hemingway is not known for complex words or using very complicated language, but there's a lot of depth to storytelling. It's full. It's brimming with symbolism. And like I said, this is the plot. Very, very quickly summarized. We'll go to our next book. Again, this is one of my favorites. It's an Indian author. He won the Booker Prize back in 2008 for this book, The White Tiger. There was also a Netflix movie on this. If you guys have seen that, good. If you haven't, maybe don't, because I don't think the movie did any justice to the book. The book is about a driver who comes from a very underprivileged, poor background, somewhere in North India, and he works for this landlord, Seth, as people call it. And something happens, and he has to take the fall for a crime that he did not commit. And the entire story revolves around that. So it's a very interesting social commentary, especially on the kind of injustices that are prevalent in a country like India. So it's a wonderful read. I think it's not too long, 300 odd pages, 320 pages. Language is very straightforward, very conversational. It's very laid back, but there's biting satire. There's a lot of humor. If you can pick up on it, it's a wonderful, refreshing, very rewarding read. Okay, so this is the plot summary. Oh, Prophet Song, another book I really love and I really enjoy. And I bought this. I think when I bought this and I read it, I just became a huge fan of this author. Very fortunately for me, I did meet Mr. Paul Lynch at a literary festival, and I got a few photos taken, and I asked him a few questions about his writing, because his writing is, especially in this book, is very unconventional. So he writes exclusively in present tense. He writes without quotations. So if two characters talk in this book, there are no quotation marks to indicate direct speech. No, he doesn't use quotations. There are no paragraph breaks. There are very few paragraph breaks. There are no paragraphs even. It's just like continuous writing that has been broken down into several chapters. 9 chapters, I think. Wonderful book. Wonderful book. I loved reading this. It's about I think a scientist. There's a woman in Ireland. I think Northern Ireland, if I'm not wrong. She's a scientist. She, of course, has a family, and the society around her is getting increasingly authoritarian. Her family members get taken away from her, and the story is about how she deals with it, how she copes with that, and how she tries to, rescue her family. I mean, I'm not going to give any spoilers. It's a wonderful book. Again, like I said, the structure of this book is very unconventional, right? And yep, this is the plot summarized. Now, this is going back to, well, I should say, I don't want to use the word hardcore, but this is proper sociology. W.E.B. Du Bois is considered like one of the most important writers as far as sociology, social commentary on racial injustices, class injustices goes. So he's a very important writer. If you're somebody who wants to understand caste, well, even class issues, social divisions, how they affect not just people who have been discriminated against, but also how they develop this sort of identity. So this book is about developing about how the blacks in America, because they were severely oppressed, how they eventually ended up developing what's called double consciousness. So the way they see themselves and the way that the the majority or the whites looked at them, there was a huge dissonance, and that led to a double personality, almost a double identity. And yeah, so it's a very interesting read. It's 250 odd pages, and I think the language is not. Oh God, I hate when this happens. I'm sorry. Yes, the language is very rich in the sense there's a lot of symbolism. There's a lot of he tries to really dive deep into this issue. It's not a straightforward read. It's not a fun read, but it's a very eye-opening read. If you do wanna do that, please do. There's a lot of philosophical elements in it. There's a lot of history elements in it. Because I think any kind of social structure which that we have today is the result of a lot of historical evolution that happened in the preceding centuries, and all these all the oppression that the oppressed classes faced. I think it all adds up and then culminates into what the social situation is today. And of course, he goes very deep into that. I'm not doing his book any justice, but please read this. It's a wonderful read. It's a wonderful way to get started on sociology, on social issues, and yeah, it's just a great book in general. Pardon. Now the next one is A Tale of Two Cities. It's a classic, Charles Dickens. I mean, everybody has heard of Charles Dickens. Classic book about two cities, Paris and London, during the French Revolution. Paris is suffering, London is thriving, and through these two cities, he hits upon a lot of very impressive, well, I wouldn't say impressive, but a lot of very poignant social themes. So it's an interesting book. It's a lengthy read. It's 400 pages, so it's not short. The language, the way he phrases his sentences, the kind of vocabulary he uses, it's very Victorian era. This is an old book. This is 300 years old, 250 to 300 years old, I think. The language, English, that we know and speak today is not the English that you'll find in this book. It's a little different. Okay, so there's a lot of archaic English, Victorian elements to it. If you want a challenge, please go for this. It's a challenging read. It's not for the average reader. Okay, if you complete this, you can say, yeah, you know what, I finished A Tale of Two Cities. Challenging read, but I got through it. Okay. Now this is The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. I love this book. It's about it's about a pair of boys, and they're growing up in 1970s, 80s Afghanistan. Now, I don't know how many of you guys know this, but Afghanistan was invaded by Russia in the 1970s. I think late 1970s, they got invaded. And it took them 10 years to push the Russians out. So, again, the book is not about the invasion as such, but how the invasion affects the lives of these two boys. There are bullies from the upper class or the rich class, and how these bullies, they benefit when the Russians invade. They kind of take over everything else. Their stranglehold on society is even more ossified, solidified, and it's a wonderful book. I'm not doing it justice. It's the language is straightforward. I think it's not too long. Well, I think it is kind of long, 372 pages, but the language is very straightforward. So as long as the language is straightforward, you don't feel like you have a lot to read. So it's a great book. You will love it. It's a book that's very human at its very core. So you love this book. And finally, I would like to conclude with The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. It won her the Booker Prize back in 97, I think. Yeah, 97. Great book. It's about the caste system, not directly, but the effects it has on people's individual liberties, rigidness of society, how it dictates that you should not be doing a certain thing or you should be doing a certain thing. That kind of goes against everything that you stand for, how it affects relationships, love, how it affects, how it leads individuals to become very cranky and sour and just bitter. So it's a wonderful read. There are many subplots, many themes in this book. 340 pages, a little lengthy, no doubt. Language is not straightforward. It's a little challenging. It's a little lyrical. The way she writes is very fluid, and the book itself is non-linear. Okay, so you have to also contend with the fact that there are events which are not happening in a straight chronological order. Okay, this is the summary of the book, very, very, very precise, very, very succinctly. Of course, there are multiple characters, there are multiple subplots, a lot of things are happening. Very interesting book. Okay, and I think that brings us to the end of our video. These were, I think, 13 to 12 books that I have read personally that I think would serve as an excellent nucleation point, a starting point for your own journey into VARC, into just reading in general. I think reading is something that most of us have stopped doing, and I think it's something that we should begin doing again, and I think it just makes you a better person. So these are the list of books you could read. I'm not saying this is an exhaustive list. There could be books you like. Please go ahead, read them. The most important thing is, the thing you should be obsessed about is, am I reading, yes or no? Don't obsess about, like I said, papers, newspapers, or articles, or hey, is this source legit, or hey, is that source bad, or hey, well, should I read this fiction novel, that fiction novel? Don't bother. Read, start reading, get into the habit of reading, and then try to become a critic or a connoisseur. Okay, then try to pass judgment that, oh, maybe XYZ newspaper isn't so good, or that novel isn't so good. Yeah, but to get there, you have to become good at reading. Okay, which unfortunately some of you may not be there yet. Okay, so these are nice starting points for you guys. Pick up any of these books or more than one of these books. Get started, get reading. Thank you so much. Please like this video if you found value in it. Please do share it with your friends, and please do subscribe to our channel for more informative videos like these. Thank you.